Axis Empires, beginning of the summer of 45. For the Axis Imperial Directive Chemical Weapons, they got the first roll. But the way these tables work, one roll only gets you an element, and in this case, unlike like with the jet fighters or something where you get an extra fighter, or the subs where you get an extra subunit, in this case you get a headquarters. The eventual is a chit that can give you an additional casualty to the enemy in one combat per round, per turn. But so far I haven't been very good at getting my directives, partially because I don't use them maybe for the long summer turn. In this case the Japanese are using the long summer turn. This may not be the most desirable of those chits though. On the German side, well, let's see what the Japanese actually succeeded in doing. Not a lot actually. They lost a unit here and kind of a unit up here. Kind of didn't manage to do terribly well anywhere. Moving to the German side, I triggered off Operation Zitadelle, and this is an interesting choice. It gets rid of a production directive. This is the end of the atomic bomb. I had held on to that for a while, but the truth of the matter is the atomic bomb doesn't help you as long as you're going, well, first of all, if you're not anywhere near victory, but as long as you're going on the Fortress Europa route rather than the SS Europa route, which is to say, if you're going for the kind of victory that says, you know, I'm not going to win the war, but I'm going to do better than historically. And here, that's the best we can hope for, is let's make this as unpainful as possible, because the truth is, the Allies are probably going to get an automatic victory on this game, on this board, in which case they will carry only X number of points over to the other board. So what happened here? Well, they built up their wall a little more, got some really nice heavy units in place, and are trying to prevent the Danish incursion from getting too ugly. That's scary though. It's just both sides are likely to break. Over here though, we got the Turks streaming in. More breakthroughs from the south. Well, not really any movement here. They didn't manage to blitz Voronezh. They put their marker here so they could. So the Russians. Well, the Russians couldn't be forced out of it anyway. They were in a no-retreat situation anyway with these spaces here. But German attacks in the center, the meat with all this artillery support, they're just not moving anywhere. They can hit the flanks that are kind of weakly defended, and there isn't much here. However, there is something here, and they've reduced Sevastopol down so that they should probably take it on the next turn and then be able to divert some of those resources upward. Alright, on to the Allies, and we'll see how long things go. One thing I wanted to mention, I thought of this on a walk with my wife as I was considering the game. She asked, are you having fun? And you know, all World War II strategic games have this same feel. Unless they go very, very wrong. And this one I tried. I really did try right over here. But unless they go very wrong, they have this feel of, okay, the Axis has a shot, maybe. And in this one, I think they actually never do. I don't feel like the game presents them with the, you can win this war, even as Germany. I think what it presents them, I mean, you can get it to the automatic victory slot, but that doesn't really say, hey, the war is over, you won. That says you won the game. Because, to tell you the truth, over on the Japanese side of things, even if they reach there, I don't feel like they can win the game without maybe things, or the war without maybe things changing over here. And likewise, you know, it isn't the victory that you feel when you knock Russia out of the war and then knock England out of the war, or vice versa in some of the other games. And maybe that's a design decision to avoid those kind of ahistorical strategies that maybe work too well in some of the games. I don't know. All I know is this one seems to suffer the same endemic problem that some of the others do, which is, hey, look, the Nazis or the Axis as a whole is doing very well. And it's interesting, and there's still this outcome in doubt. And then, at some point or another, if things work well, as they did here, maybe a little too early, but in almost any World War II game, they reach their crest of their tide, they start decreasing, and it's clear they are never going to win the war. Then it just becomes, okay, now that you didn't win the war, are you going to win this game about the war? And it's one of the things I never liked about, say, Victory in the Pacific, which may be a fantastic game, but it doesn't catch me in that way. And most World War II strategics have the same issue. I don't feel that way necessarily about, well, okay, so something like a North Africa campaign, I do have that too. There's this period where the game's interesting, and it's when the Axis is winning or available on the offense. But once the tide switches, it's not there anymore. And I don't feel like any other era has that same feeling. Maybe the NATO stuff has kind of that feeling if it's built in so that you can actually stop the Russians. But most other eras, even World War I, most of the game, the whole damn thing's in doubt. I don't feel like that's the case with most World War II strategic games. Wow, I've talked a lot about this. It's really stuff that should be in the final review, but you know, that final review is just a request thing that players have asked for me to kind of summarize what I say in the game. I say things when I think them, and I may not remember them when it's time for that. So those of you who are following this, you may see it's worth kind of skimming through these, even in games maybe that I'm not terribly interested in, because some points I'm just not going to repeat. Okay, onward. Let's look at the Western Allies choices here. Eureka Conference. Yet another one of these many discussions that goes on. Some troops, some of which don't really help the, I didn't even add them to the force pool, because I don't know if the country doesn't exist. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. I think they're supposed to, but I don't really want to worry about it too much. What did the Allies do? Well, they're starting to conglomerate their forces. They pushed in, they've taken Batavia, and launched an invasion which hasn't completely succeeded yet of Palau. It's underway, and yes, they have the troop train here so that they can bring a headquarters in with the invasion. That seems like the best use of that is to get that extra shift from a headquarters unit, as well as whatever extra strength it might generate. That's about it right now. Definitely starting to transfer more and more on. Heading for Singapore. Borneo. We'll see one thing. I looked at the rules, and actually Avalanche isn't even needed. Netherlands East Indies is over here now as a part of them. So my use of the Avalanche card with the intention of using it in the Netherlands didn't make a lot of sense anyway. That's sort of part of the natural rules for that country, as it is for Belgium in the West, and we'll touch on that in a moment. But, what was their card? Operation Roundup. This is the match to Husky. Gives me some armor, not a lot more. Most importantly, perhaps a Blitz marker, which was used to good effect, and we see some Belgians actually have slipped behind Frankfurt. There's a small German line here, but it's cut off. We got the Swedes coming down here, and it looks like the Western defenses have collapsed. Good weather pretty much demolished them, and now we go on to the Russians and see what they can do to the remains of the East Front here. And finally, here for the May-June turn, the Russians played War Progress card. They've got to get these out. Gives them some additional troops in the future. Not a lot happened over here. No big shock. But they did push a little bit against the Japanese, knocked them back. Knocked another unit here back. You know, just giving them some strain and using whatever advantages. On the other hand, the Rumyantsev offensive was kicked off, and that's got a lot of troops with it, etc. A couple of Blitz markers, and bang, the German line has disappeared. I mean, the whole center here. The center's been cracked. The northern area is gone. The south, well, the Russians aren't doing too terribly there either, to tell you the truth. They're beginning to form up and look in better shape than the Germans. The German army's had it. It's just a question of, you know, they have to figure that out on their own. Now, one of their problems is this game generates the Hitler mentality, sort of. And it's the, see if I can find it. Not that. It's these no retreat markers. So once it's out there, you can retreat, but before it gets out there, you can't. And you have to do some silly things like do not leave. Not Stalingrad, nobody cares about that, but you could say something because it's not a victory point hex, and that's actually a problem. That's a reason why, one argument why the Stalingrad hex should be a victory point, not because it's terribly important, because it would simulate that no retreat order. On the other hand, you could definitely see something like that happening where the Germans want to defend, say, Rostov at almost all costs to get the no retreat marker into a place. They can give it up after that. It doesn't matter too much. I mean, it still is important, but if they can hold it that extra turn or something, it ends up changing the victory points that they need to win the game. And that's kind of a nice little mechanism, I think, that simulates the orders that happened at Stalingrad, even if it doesn't work for Stalingrad itself. Anyway, looking at this, Poland's going to fall pretty soon. There's just not much left. It's those Russian headquarters. They just, you know, they're so potent. They drove the German army and crushed it here. A couple blitz markers, some support units, etc. And it's all over. All right, well, we'll move to the next turn then. June, July of 45, and the Japanese, not a lot they can do. They're coming to grips with the Russians up here and just not able to put that final squeeze in place. The odds aren't good enough. And there's not much they can do about the American advances as they go. One thing I found was all the counters I've been forgetting to put down as people conquered stuff. Some of that matters before the war, and some of it probably should have been there already. But as things went further and further into the game, they became less and less important, I think. Over here in Europe, though, Germans pulling back, forming a coherent line. Some Turks coming back to try to deal with the possible threat the colonials are handling here. There's still this big gap, though. I couldn't quite close it. Yeah, trying to get the Germans out of the north here. Again, couldn't quite get out. Had to squeeze to there. The Russians are going to be able to do a lot of damage there. And over here, well, here it's just wide open. Germans have fallen back as much as they can. There's still a unit in Frankfurt, but you know, it looks like it's collapsing on all fronts, and I just don't see stopping the advance in any sense. All right, we'll see. Okay, so the Allies continue to slog their way through. Now they're on Sumatra. Managed to get some shipping in here after the Netherlands was converted. I'm sure I'm probably cheating with that. As well with this, the invasion of Palau was successful. We're positioning ourselves for an invasion of the Philippines, but the weather is not really in our favor here. That northern monsoon is going to be a problem until September. So I don't know if I'm going to manage the invasion. I can manage to get a foothold in Malaysia, though, unpleasant weather or not, and try to position myself for further exploits northward as the weather clears up. These guys pretty much cut off now by the actions the U.S. has taken. The U.S. has such naval superiority at this point and support unit superiority that the Japanese really can't interfere. The only thing that's stopping an invasion of turn is, well, you got to actually fight it out, and it took them this turn to take Palau. You got some units, losses, breakdowns, whatever. Over in the European front, things are looking even worse for the Axis. I mean, these are Swedes here, British troops in Warsaw. There's still a couple Germans down here in Munich, but for the most part, the German line's been completely demolished in this time, and they can't even build troops outside of really Munich. They don't own cities. I believe I have to try to figure out if Vienna and if Austria and Czechoslovakia are considered part of Germany for building purposes. I think they may be, but it's going to be over real soon. Actually, they do have one city. Oh no, they even lost Königsberg. Yeah, I mean, there's almost nothing there. So now we go to the Soviets, and they get to do a follow-up and, you know, see if they can smash through and gain back their territory. It looks like the European war is pretty much over, though. And for the Russian turn here, more stasis up here. Some attritional attacks, but Europe broken wide open. Well, first of all, Poland surrendered. I forgot to do that and actually attacked one of their units before taking them off. They're now part of the Western Allies for conquering all their territory, and they've been liberated, or whatever you want to call it. So the attack through the Minsk area really broken open. A couple German units still kicking around up here. That south is still very strong, but the Pripyat marshes are beginning to be cut through. And, you know, I mean, it's just a matter of wiping up the troops and grabbing the zones. You've got Turks starting to head back home, hoping to defend their territory against possible British attacks. Just, you know, the Axis is pretty much throwing in the towel here. There isn't much to do. Alright, one more turn on this tape. I want to get the whole summer in. I know I'm taking longer on each one, but the turns are getting kind of rich. Alright, onward. Well, I would have liked to go to sleep, but bandwidth issues are making me tape another one, or finish this tape up. Japanese, well, they got the, see it here, their chemical weapons ability. They're using that to help degrade the Russian forces. Actually, I haven't looked to see if I've got an attack here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Could be a 3 to 2. Otherwise, at about even, I guess I'll leave it alone. I'm going to have significant force on there very shortly after this. I don't know. Anyway, the Germans withdrew. We got them in Munich and Prague, falling back. And then here, again, their southern line doesn't look too terrible. It's got some problems. Trying to hold on to Rostov. I'm not sure why. Because honestly, they're already in the negative points. They should just give it up. In fact, I think we're going to. We're going to abandon that. And send the rest of these down this way. Problem is, of course, the rest of those might get killed more easily not defending it. I don't know. They might as well defend it. They got to defend somewhere, and it doesn't really matter where. Yeah, I mean, it's just a situation of the marker's already in the negatives. The Allies have already won the war on this front. It's just a matter of getting to that automatic victory whenever that is. And that's actually not too far away, I would guess, as the Balkans gets liberated and the rest of Russia gets cleaned out. It should pretty much fall. By the points, I just don't know. I haven't added them all, but -17. I don't know how much is left. I got a few here still, a couple here, and then some riches there to fall. All right, on to the Allies. So for the Allies, well, let's look at them over in the Asian theater first. A landing here, and this is gone. Positioning themselves on Borneo. The particulars of the weather prevented them from really pushing deeper into, say, Indochina or making the invasion on the Philippines. Borneo is a good target. It's got a victory point hex, so they wanted to take it out. And they're shipping forces to position themselves for the major invasions that they're planning shortly. And over in Europe, well, they've overrun all of Germany. They've taken Vienna, they've taken Prague, they've taken every single Germanish city. I don't know what this means for the German supply situation. I have to try to figure that out. I don't think it's a really vital issue during the Russian turn, which is coming up, and then I can go to bed. Oops, I forgot to move these guys. Not that they can really do much there. But yeah, it's it's just a matter of mopping up here. And I should just call and say, this map is a 4 victory point map, and stop playing with it and stop messing around with it, because it's over, man. I mean, the Balkans would not be resisting at this point. The German army here would probably be surrendering now that Germany's gone. Yeah, but we gotta play it out. Alright, on to the Russians. And briefly at the end here, well, nothing much happened over here in Asia. But in Europe, the Russians are finishing off the rest of the Germans. Still clumps left in the south, but, they're positioning themselves to take them down. And Minsk is theirs. Basically, everything's fallen. The only real issue remaining is taking out some of the miners. It just does not feel proper to me that this is actually being fought out. I just can't imagine it at this point. That the German army wouldn't surrender. But then again, they were very unhappy with the idea of surrendering to Russians historically. So it's quite possible they might have thought, hey, maybe we can make our way back. I don't know. Anyway, I gotta count victory points along with all the other stuff in the turn, but I'm gonna send this one up after I do that. So just as a cap off at the end here, the Japanese ended up still holding on to their 3 victory point position. They haven't started losing ground enough yet. They are basically breaking even or losing a little bit. It's no longer cranking the points. They would not have won had they gone with the Hakuichu or whatever. Over on Germany's side, yeah, it's at 2 victory points for the Allies now. And I mean, obviously, Germany's lost the war. The only question was, hey, would that no retreat button do anything? Well, it turned out it got delayed way too long, and they didn't get to edge it in where they wanted to, and they didn't manage to hold off long enough to get it. Now it's just a matter of mopping this stuff up. I'm going to look at the rules, see if there's any way I can justify saying that it all just surrenders, which I think would actually be the case. But until then, I'm going to load this up, and I'll let you guys see what the summer of 45 looked like.